looking forward to the talk. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to nutrition. So this presentation, it focuses solely on kind of breeding young stock and that focus on the nutritional management during the weaning stage. There's a few slides then on the sales prep and a few things you can do, finishing touches coming up to the sale. So at the end of the presentation, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have, or I'll also leave my email there. So if anyone would like to discuss their horse's diet in more detail outside of the call, that can be arranged as well. So let's take it right back to the very start point. So a healthy foal starts with the mare. So correct nutrition of the brood mare is critical for both the health of the mare, the growth of the foal in utero, and the long-term development and health of that offspring. So always think of the foal when you're feeding the mare in gestation. So nutrition influences conception, early embryonic loss, abortion, foal vigor at birth, the ability to recover from foaling and conceive again, and the growth and soundness of that suckling foal. So from breeding right through to weaning time, the nutritional demands of the brood mare, they're divided into a key number of periods. So you have conception, you have early pregnancy, mid-pregnancy, and your last trimester. Then you're into early and late lactation, and then weaning time. So the nutritional requirements for these stages differ, and adjustments should be made to the mare and the foal's feeding program to accommodate those differences. So for example, if you have over or under nutrition of the broodmare, that can lead to reduced colostrum quality and poor growth rates, or you could increase the risk of those developmental orthopedic diseases in your young foal. So previously it was believed that the nutritional requirements didn't increase until late pregnancy, so the last trimester, but we now know and recognize the increased needs of additional protein, calories, and all those micronutrients from month 5 onwards. So fetal growth in the horse is not linear. During the last trimester of pregnancy, there is a rapid growth. So the mare's energy requirements increase significantly. As this is when you have your rapid growth of the fetus and the associated membranes. So protein and mineral requirements is needed in a greater extent. So that's just due to the synthesis of fetal tissue and the growth of the foal in utero. So you can see the graph there, really from month 5 onwards, you have that huge amount of growth. The fetus can grow up, increase in weight by up to 1 pound per day during the last 90 days of gestation. So that accounts for over 60% of the total fetal growth. Just gives you an idea of the growth of the foal in utero. So while most of the calorie and protein requirements are met in the grass and early to mid gestation, your trace elements, including the essential vitamins and minerals, should be supplemented, especially from month 5 onwards. So your calcium phosphorus requirements, they double in late gestation. So this is vital for skeletal development and bone mineralization. Copper and zinc, manganese, iron, these will all be transferred from the mare to the fetus and stored in the liver for use after birth, as the mare's milk is naturally low in these elements. So again, just the importance of the trace mineral supplementation. Copper, for example, is naturally deficient in most Irish soils and should be supplemented with the correct balance of zinc throughout late gestation and early lactation. So this again, by giving it to the broodmare, you're passing it on to the foal, giving it its best chance. So there's a range of copper supplements available through Foreign Equine. So if the Copper Vit, which is a daily liquid supplement, or the Copper Max, which is a paste syringe. So we usually recommend 3 syringes between 7 to 14 days for the mare in late gestation. So to summarize the key points when feeding the broodmare, keep meal sizes small, that idea of little and often, and be sure to choose a highly digestible feed. So when you look at the back of your bag, have a look at for cooked grains. For example, our 14% stud mix will have a triple grain, oat flakes, barley flakes, maize flakes, and all of these are steam cooked. So that just means it's more digestible to the mare. And the top 3 ingredients, they really make up about 45 to 50% of the feed. So always make sure that they're good quality, and they really should be a high energy grain source or a protein source like your soybean if you're feeding young stock or brood mares. So it's important to remember that during late gestation, the mare's appetite will naturally decrease as well by about 20%. So this is just as the fetus grows, it puts physical pressure on the digestive system. So at this stage, it's important to feed small meals. Again, your digestible meals are really important, and good quality forage as well. So your B vitamins are great help here if you have a mare that has lost her appetite. The 4 is a palatable B vitamin syrup, so that can help in this case and just encourage the mare to eat. It also has a probiotic in it, so it's nice if the mare is feeling a bit off at this time. Or if the mare is not finishing all her feed and it's a critical time where her nutrient requirements have increased, you can top dress a stud mix or stud cubes with a balancer. So this where we'd recommend the Grow Care Balancer. And this just helps to ensure that the mare is meeting her requirements. So yeah, I suppose the second point there, you just need to ensure that the mare is receiving a fully balanced diet. So for example, she's meeting all her requirements for protein, vitamin, minerals for that stage of pregnancy. If you have a good doer or feeding rates are low, you can always top dress with a balancer or a multivitamin and mineral syrup. And that just ensures that she's getting everything she needs. And finally, to feed around your forage. So this is key, and we'll touch on forage later in the slides. So grass and or your forage is the main source of nutrition, so it's important to consider its value. So the newborn foal, foals are born with no immunity, so it must be obtained via absorption of good quality colostrum that's rich in immunoglobulins. So the foal's gut is only permeable to immunoglobulins between 12 and 24 hours after birth. So taking a colostrum sample here and testing it with a refractometer will give you a good indication of the colostrum quality. So supplementing high levels of vitamin E in late gestation, that's been shown to improve immunoglobulin level in colostrum. So good quality stud feed will provide the recommended daily intake, but additional supplementation can be considered to aid, say, older mares, maiden mares, or mares that maybe consistently produce poor quality colostrum year on year. So for the first 2 months of the foal's life, the mare's milk should meet its energy, protein, and nutrient requirements. So the mare's milk won't provide the optimal levels of all minerals, but the foal will alleviate these deficiencies by pulling it from the mineral stores accumulation in the liver. So that's just bouncing back to that slide on your vitamin mineral and the importance of that intake. So once you're feeding the mare a balanced diet, that'll go pass on to the foal and it'll use that mineral store in the first few weeks of life. So the small intestine will develop between birth and 4 weeks. So that allows for efficient grain digestion quite early. And the hindgut is a bit slower to develop. So that's between 2 to 6 months. And therefore forage is not efficiently digested at a young age. So foreign equine's Friscofoal is a nice option for foals. It's a palatable multivitamin and prebiotic syrup, specifically designed to support foals' development and gut health. Friscofoal is safe to use on a newborn foal, and many studs incorporate it and use it as a standard management for all foals in the first few weeks of life, just to ensure that they have, just for overall digestive health, and also to ensure that they have a boost of immunity there in the first few weeks. And because of its palatability, it can also aid with handling foals. It's a great one. We always see videos of foals coming up to have a bit of the Friscofoal from the bottle. So foals will begin picking at their dam's feed when they're only a few days old, but creep feeding will become nutritionally important when the mare's milk begins to decrease. So this is around 8 weeks after foaling. So creep feeding can begin earlier than 8 weeks if the mare's milk production is poor. So this is where the foal pellets or Grow Care Balancer is ideal. Feeding concentrates should be restricted to about 500 grams per 100 kilo body weight, and you're increasing that gradually by about 6 months of age. You're on about 2 kilos, 2 kilos at weaning time. So the weanling is still growing, and it's important that that growth curve is steady. So nutrition plays that key role there to ensure that it's a steady, even growth between its time with the mare, weaning, and then going on to be a yearling on its own. Creep feeding should be in place to maintain daily weight gain, but exceeding growth rates or over-conditioning foals should never be the goal. So this leads to more problems. So we'll have a look at that later in the slides. Creep feeding serves 2 purposes. So firstly, to guarantee the weaning's nutritional needs are being met, and secondly, to familiarize the weaning with eating grain. So feeding time will be less stressful once you're separated from the mare. So the most suitable hard feed will depend on a number of factors, including the body condition, the presence of any developmental orthopedic diseases. The time of the year that weaning is taking place should also be considered. So for example, we deal with a lot of thoroughbred farms too. So the thoroughbred foal can be weaned in late summer, early autumn, and they'll require a very different ration to say a Connemara foal who might be weaned in the springtime. So at the time of weaning, the foal should be receiving sufficient nutrients from its feed to maintain that weight and consistent growth when the milk supply and the mare is taken away. So the aim from then on is to maintain an even growth rate and good body condition by providing a balanced diet. So how the foal is fed following weaning often depends greatly on what's expected of it in the following months. So weaning destined for the show ring or sales ring, for example, would be managed a lot more intensely than one that's been raised as a homebred performance prospect, for example, where maximal growth and condition is not as important at that moment in time. So we'll just have a look at the feed options here. So foals that are doing well on the mare or are what we term good doers, and they don't need very much to hold their condition. So they're recommended to specialize creep feed to reduce the calorie intake, but allow your vitamin mineral intake to remain high in order to support balanced growth. So that's where we recommend the Growth Care Balancer. These foals may be at risk at developing something like epiphysitis, which is just a slight swelling. And that's usually due to their body condition and being slightly overtopped, is what we call, or overweight, or a developmental orthopedic disease. So strong foals as well. So your native breeds, your Connemara's, your Irish drafts, some sport horses as well will benefit from a low calorie balancer. So that's again to support a steady and even growth curve. The Growth Care Balancer is a lovely feed. It's part of our care range. So it has the benefits of the care package, which include the antioxidants, so your vitamin E, selenium. It has a bone support package in there too. So you have your calcium, phosphorus, and vitamin K, and then pure protected yeast and probiotics, moss and phos, which is extremely important, especially around weaning. If it is a time of stress, it just helps keep the whole digestive tract and the stomach healthy. It also has a gastric acid buffer. So again, that's just aimed at stomach health. So it's a lovely all-round feed. It can be fed to young stock, to brood mares as well, stallions. So it's a lovely option if you have, say, a mare, a foal on good grass, good grazing, and you're not looking for a very calorie-dense feed. The other option is the 18% foal and yearling cubes and mix. So a late foal or a weak foal, they might require a higher intake of hard feed and that calorie source. So the 18% foal and yearling mix or cubes, it's grain based, it's extremely palatable. So even if you have young stock that have a reduced appetite or a fussy eater, it's a great option. Or if there is a foal that has had an illness when it's younger or slightly behind, this is a really nice feed. It just provides that additional calorie source alongside your quality protein, vitamin, minerals. Equally, some people will wean onto the Connolly's Red Mills stud cubes, the stud mix, or if they need a low starch diet, the horse care feeds, which are also excellent options and as a complete feed for a growing youngster. So in feeding mares and foals, it's important to start from the ground up. Grazing also acts as a good form of exercise for the heavily pregnant mare. It helps to maintain fitness and tone, which is a huge advantage at foaling time, and also for the foal for bone remodeling and development. So exercise is so important when they're growing. A forage and pasture analysis should be the starting point of any feeding program. So if you can send a sample of your forage or even do a soil sample test, they can be sent to Chagas or the Irish Equine Centre. It just gives you an idea of what nutrition base you have there. And then we can build a diet plan on that to see whether there's any deficiencies and match a nice suitable diet around your forage. So grass is the main source of nutrition for weanlings. The weanling should have access to ad lib forage. So that's to keep their digestive tract healthy and supply an ideal source of energy. So that's a nice, cool energy, steady growth curve again. It's important to bear in mind that feeding a forage-only diet during and post-weaning, while it's excellent for the gastrointestinal health and that digestive system, it will not meet the full nutritional requirements of the foal. So Weanings are also weaned at different times of the year. So this is also important to consider the quality of grazing and forage when you're choosing your suitable feed. So looking at weaning now, weaning has been described as one of the most stressful time in any horse's life. So stress levels are quite high. We see this through increased cortisol, and stress can manifest itself in a multitude of behaviors. So that's increased frequency in vocalizations, movement, altered feeding, sleeping patterns, irritability, anxiety, aggressiveness, or even a reduction in play behaviors. So these are all just your challenges when it comes to weaning. So this period carries a high risk of foals developing your stereotypical behaviors such as wood chewing, crib biting, as well as your risk of compensatory growth and developmental orthopedic diseases. So during weaning, it's not uncommon for foals to lose weight and maybe experience inappetite and develop mild diarrhea. So the foal is also vulnerable to infection due to suppressed immune system in this post-weaning period. So here's our growth curve I keep mentioning. The weaning is still growing, so it's important that that growth curve is steady, and nutrition plays a key role here to ensure that steady growth curve. So inadequate or an imbalanced feeding of the growing youngster, that can result in your skeletal issues, including those developmental orthopedic diseases. So any period of stress or illness can cause compensatory growth, which can affect then your growth curve. So you aim to avoid any of those growth spurts in young foals. This puts them in the risk of a range of developmental orthopedic diseases. So that term developmental orthopedic diseases is like an umbrella term used to describe, say, the disturbance in the change of cartilage to bone. So it can represent itself as your OCDs, your epiphysitis, your angular limb deformity, your flexural limb deformities, and different problems like that. So growth surges commonly occur following a period of slow or reduced growth due to a period of stress. So this could be weaning, could be illness, even shipping when horses are traveling. So to avoid that sharp drop off at weaning and then a sudden spike back up, avoid as much stress for the foal as possible during weaning. So reduce feed intake and growth rates. There's an increased risk of compensatory growth. So ensuring the foal is eating well at least 2 or 3 weeks before weaning is essential to reduce the associated risks. So prior to weaning, the foal should be accustomed to eating solid feed. Ideally, the diet you intend for it to be managed on post-weaning. This is usually not a problem if the mare has been fed a hard feed, as many foals are dipping their head into the feed bins by a few weeks of age. It's important not to allow young stock to become overtopped. Overweight foals are at a greater risk of these developmental orthopedic diseases. So along with a balanced young stock feed and a good quality forage, the digestive system can be supported with additional supplements. So during this period, yeast supplements can be beneficial. They increase feed digestion, efficiency, and just help stabilize the healthy hindgut flora. We'll also look at the next slide, which has the foreign equine Atosorb gel. So if the foal or weanling has a mild diarrhea or loose droppings, the Atosorb gel is an excellent support for foals. So it just aids with clearing up that diarrhea and also electrolyte replacement. Friscofol can also be used at this time. So that's to support immune health. It's a palatable syrup. So it's ideal for those weanlings during that period of stress. It's a prebiotic in there, multivitamin, minerals. So you're giving the whole immune system a boost, and just you can go in, you can reassure them, give them a bit of Friscofol. So it's a really nice supplement to use around this time. So we'll just take a look at some of the risk factors for your developmental orthopedic disease. So you have your inadequate energy intake, followed by a compensatory growth. If you have suboptimal mineral and protein provision, large cereal-based meals, so these are your hormones. So feeding diets high in starch and sugar, they can alter the levels of glucose, insulin, thyroxine, and your growth hormones. And these hormonal changes can influence cartilage formation and potentially then increase the risk of developmental orthopedic disease. So there's a link there And that would be if your feeding rates were quite high. So that would kind of tie in if you were prepping a foal or a weanling or a yearling, and you were trying to get that condition by feeding a large amount, say, of a cereal-based feed. So there's different ways of managing that condition without overdoing the starch and sugar content. So your overweight foals, they're also at a greater risk of developmental orthopedic disease. And then restricted exercise. So your bone strength, it depends primarily on the diet, but exercise is also essential and bone building factor here. So stimulating bone growth and strength. So adequate protein, minerals, they're of no value without adequate and appropriate exercise, because the bone tissue is dynamic. It's constant state of mineral deposition, absorption, and flowing in and out. So they're constantly remodeling itself in response to the forces and the impact of loading. So it is really important that the foals are out and moving around while they're growing. So just 2 studies here just to show the growth and your DODs. So a tendency for rapid growth may be an inherited trait. So it should be monitored closely. So do keep an eye on your foals. However, excessive conditioning, so that's mainly due to overfeeding. So this is an increase in calories, not your protein content. So that's proven to increase the risk of your developmental orthopedic disease. So a study in America showed the growth rate of OCDs. They were 32% on a farm where the body weight was over 15% of the average, and 0% on a farm where the body weights were 3% less than the average. So that just give you an indication there. And another Dutch study as well. So there was a higher incidence of your OCD occurrence in foals with a higher average daily weight gain in the 3 months post-weaning. So it's just important to monitor your body weight closely and keep an eye for any of these growth disturbances, that this is the window of time, I suppose, that they can occur. So bone development, this begins before birth and continues beyond 18 months of age. So the period between 3 to 9 months seems to be the most precarious for the foal in terms of your DODs. So a steady growth along with a typical nice growth curve is essential here. Your bone is continuously strengthened, repaired, replaced. Therefore, if we can aid this process with good nutrition, we can help decrease the likelihood of skeletal injury. So the essential nutrients needed for bone health are your protein, your minerals such as calcium, phosphorus, zinc, copper, and vitamins A, D, and K. And providing a concentrate feed with high quality protein is also essential. So your soybean meal, that contains your highest level of lysine. So that's what you're looking for in the back of your bag. There's also supplements available to support bone health. So that's the foreign equine osteoglycan. So that's to continue supporting bone health and development in foals right through to young horses. It's a powdered supplement and it contains your chelated copper and zinc, as well as vitamins A, D, and they're really important for your bone mineralization. It also contains marine collagen and an organic silica, all of which play an essential role in the formation of bone. Another option is the Calgrow. A lot of breeders will be feeding this to the mare, and it can be continued to the foal and the weanling. So it's a great support, and it contains all the essential ingredients needed for your bone development and growth. So I'll finish off now having a look at the foal sales prep. So achieving your sales target, you have your key features, which are your coat condition, that lovely top line, clean limbs, strength and size, good feet, clean wind, and good health. So your sales prep checklist, firstly, feed only high quality early cut hay. So you want to avoid that pot-bellied appearance, and that's really associated with mature hay that has a high lignin content. So it just means that the more they chew, it's harder to digest in the hind gut, and it can just leave that pot-bellied appearance. As well, clean, dust-free, and avoid any respiratory inflammations. So again, just a good quality forage that's dust-free. Manage your meal size and try to split feeding into at least 3 meals a day and avoid starch overload. So feed small, highly digestible meals, and that will just reduce your risk of any hindgut acidosis, ulcers, or colic at this time. Ensure warming is up to date. So your fecal samples, they can be taken and counts tested in the Irish Equine Centre. So that's also another important factor. So looking at the hoof and coat, so for your top line, ensure that your adequate protein, quality protein is provided. So hair and hoof are mainly made up of your keratin. So this is also your protein source. So it has lots of benefits there. And ideally your feed that you'll be on, either your balancer option or your complete feed, like the 18% foal and yearling mix or cube, they will contain quality protein source there. So it's just about providing that option to them. Hoof health, so that's provide a balanced diet, and that will include levels of your biotin, zinc, copper. You can supplement over the top as well if you have a horse that has particularly bad or poor feet. That just helps give them that support. So your main ingredients you're looking for are your biotin, zinc, and your copper there. Coat condition, so you can supplement with omega-3 rich oils, so your linseed, fish oils, they're great sources. Copper is also excellent for pigmentation, so giving a copper supplement has lots of benefits. So moving on to that there, your CopperVit, which contains chelated copper, zinc, and manganese. So this has so many benefits for both joint and connective tissue development to coat pigmentation. And it's a great one to give after the foal has been weaned from the mother, or you're on the lead up to a sale. It just gives them that extra final glow. And it's ideal for sales prep or supporting and developing joints through periods of vulnerability. So that includes your time of weaning and sales prep. And your Kentucky Karen oil. So again, another all-around fantastic supplement. It contains your omega-3, 6, and 9, which has so many benefits in the diet. And they act as like an anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory. So it's great for the skin, coat condition, digestive health, immune health, fertility. The list goes on. So it's a really nice one to include, especially on the run up to the sale. So the Cardi and Martin products, so this is for your turnout, for those final touches going into the sale ring. So they have a range of products that help you prepare your foal going to the sale. So from shampoos, which they have one in nearly every color, your mane, your tail, your coat sprays, hoof oils, and your daily conditioners for strengthening their hoofs. So there's a lot of lovely products there that can come into play when you're preparing your foal. So just to summarize, I suppose the key points here are your balanced diet from conception onwards. So always think of the foal when you're feeding the mare. And then that will lead into the second point, which is keeping that idea of that steady growth curve in mind. So you're trying to consistently keep that growth very steady, that they're growing and they're getting everything they need at this stage. And then never to allow your young stock to be overtopped or allow them to become top heavy or overweight. This just leads you into a lot of different problems, especially your DODs and your epiphysitis. So it's another key point to remember. So best of luck with your foals and the weaning stage. That's the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions now, I'm happy to help, or if there's anything I can help with, you can pop me an email either.
Thanks a million, Nicole. That was super. Does anyone have any questions for Nicole?
Hi, hello there.
Hi.
Mark Hester is my name. I'm a member of the Mayor's Common Breeders Group, but there was a supplement there, Atazorb, is it?
Yeah, the Atazorb gel.
Yeah, can you give me a couple of different instances where that might be useful? If you said there's electrolytes in it.
Yeah, so it's useful for, say, a foal that has scoured, has mild diarrhea, even foal heat diarrhea. It just helps bind that those fluids, and it also contains an electrolyte. So when they're losing that much fluids, they're losing a bit of electrolytes too, and can kind of leave them feeling that bit zonked. So that supplement is great there. Usually you would do, I think it's a dose of 3 tubes is your maximum amount, and it clears them up and it just helps them rebalance with electrolytes. So yeah, if you have, even sometimes when they go through foal heat or it's a scour, that's not a serious, obviously not a veterinary level issue, or even weaning, if you have a slight droppings that are quite runny, it's a really nice one to use there.
Right. And it's compatible for an older horse also, is it?
Yeah, we've 2 products. So there's the Atasorb gel and then Asorb as well. So that's probably better for an older horse if it's a big, say it's a mare, or you're looking at a 400, 500 kilo horse, because you're feeding, your dose rate of that is a bit higher. So it's in a liquid form. So that's called Asorb. And that would be your option for, say, a fully grown adult horse.
Very good. What sort of money is it per tube, or?
I actually don't know off the top of my head.
I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know.
I can take a look through, Nicole.
Sorry about that. I'm not too sure.
No, not to worry. Thank you. That's
Okay.
great. Very good presentation.
I just have one question there for Nicole as well.
Yeah.
Patrick Hester here, Nicole, Mayoris Common Breeders Group. I suppose, Nicole, you know, the talk tonight is about filling the gap between that. Now the foals are selected, now we're looking at the weaning phase, and I suppose keeping that healthy growth curve going in the foals right to the point of sale, you know. And again, on the day, we have capacity to probably let the foals go loose and show capacity in the loose movement. And I've noticed myself down through the years that a lot of the foals, when they went loose, it was the selling of them. And I just wondered there, with the copper vit, is that something you would use in moderation? Would it give them that little bit of extra energy on the day? Would it make them feel that little bit fresh in themselves and show themselves that little bit better? Or is it, what's that product for, the copper vit? What would you advise that?
Yeah, so the copper vit is more, I'd say it's like, say, copper is an important mineral in your pigmentation, so it'll really bring out their coat. Say if you have a horse that's getting ready to go somewhere, and say their summer coat, usually when you give a copper dose, the dapples come out, so it's really good for pigmentation, and then it's where your bone and cartilage development as well. So I suppose once the foal is on a feed, it has a balanced diet and there's no deficiencies there, because copper deficiency is common in Ireland, especially with just the soil mineral profile. So once everything is being met, they do then tend to feel a lot more better in themselves and well. But there is, like, I suppose your feeds that contain your grains, like your foal and yearling mix, a handful of that, and that kind of grain-based feed is going to give that quick release energy and that spark that when they're let loose, they
it is athletes for selling at the end of the day, you know. And I did notice there that you'd covered kind of the feeding and production and the weaning phase in the thoroughbred sector. And I just have a question there. I know that a lot of the national hunt guys don't be too fond of rugs and clipping them, but if I know it's certainly common on the continent, having spent some time here and being based here. But have you any advice on clipping foals and rugging foals, and how many weeks before should they be doing that so that they don't have this clipped look the night before the sale? Have you come across that yourself? Or
yeah, do you know what, to be honest, I haven't ever prepped a foal for a sale of my own. So when I have worked in studs, it has been on the thoroughbred side, so I probably wouldn't be in the best position to give advice on how many weeks out to be clipping in that. I suppose if you are looking at clipping from a nutrition perspective, if you have that carn oil in there and that copper vit, that'll just enhance that coat that's underneath and keep it really silky, and it won't give that dry appearance. Because sometimes they lose their coat. Usually it is earlier, a few weeks ago, when they're starting to shed and change color, and then they have that lovely coat underneath. But yeah, from I suppose from feeding perspective, your two key ones there are your oils and your copper. But I wouldn't really be, I wouldn't like to give advice somewhere. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with, especially with clipping, and that usually we have the woolly weanlings going around.
Yeah, no, it's gone very specialized now, I've noticed. And as I said at the beginning, the production has really improved in Ireland, and what's come out to our selection days has been, it's just the standard is full credit to the breeders. They've been watching and paying attention, and that's the product that we want to promote as well, so that on the day all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and that we're all pulling together to deliver on the day as well, not just us through our marketing and our selection. That the onus is on the breeder as well to produce and feed his foal and present it on the day as well. And just for people that are viewing there, there's quite a number of older breeders that have foals qualified for it. We're going to have a platinum service available for the breeders on the day as well, for some of the breeders that won't be able to maybe produce their foal at home. Obviously, we'd hope we'd have the leading done and not have to work. But we do have a platinum and production service on the day of the sale or prior to the night before the sale. So just get in touch with the group. Anybody out there that needs that service, and a few of the older guys are certainly availing of it, and it's just another thing, give back to the breeders. Okay. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Yeah, I suppose when you're feeding young stock, the most important part of it is really feeding your broodmare. And once you get that right and you keep things very simple, then those finishing touches with your supplements are like your little tools you can pull out of the bag when it comes to the sale. But yeah, once you don't overcomplicate it and you treat each foal as an individual, like that one that's a good doer or one that needs a bit more support, it's quite, yeah, it's all about just giving them the individual attention.
Yeah.
Nicole, do you mind if I share my screen there for just a second? Just most of the supplements and the Cardale Martin products that Nicole has mentioned there this evening, I think my screen has gone all black, so I'm going to turn off my camera. Apologies. I hope you can still hear me. I'm going to just share my screen there for 2 seconds. So a lot of the supplements that Nicole would have mentioned today, we do have a website. It's the redmillstore.ie. So all of the 4 equine supplements that Nicole spoke about on the call, and also the Cardale Martin products, they are available to purchase online, and that will include obviously delivery as well. So I think the KSOR product there that we spoke about is just there on the right hand side, and then the Asorb as well. I think that was €13 per syringe there, or $14.95 I should say. So again, they can be purchased on the redmillstore.ie. We have on the redmills.ie site. So we have 2 websites. One is the store, it's the online shop. The other is then the corporate site, in which we have an expert advice section. So there is a huge amount of content there in relation to breeding and young stock. So a good degree of content which would back up, I suppose, a lot of what Nicole has covered in the presentation. But obviously, time allowing, allows us to go into a bit more detail, including the weaning nutritional management piece as well. There is also then a sales prep section. Now, this is predominantly focused maybe at the yearling sales prep, but a lot of the principles would apply in terms of a practical guide to sales prep, feeding, forage, as Nicole mentioned, such an important factor, those finishing touches, the supplementation, etc. So there's a couple of nice pieces in those articles if they are of interest to people as well.
That's brilliant, Jane.
Oh, I think we have a question there. Is after coming in. Apologies. Mark's looking for the discount. Okay, we'll have to sort something out. Sure, we'll get a promo code set up for everyone who joined. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I just, because Mark is on the line there, in terms of the trimming, because Mark, my brother, he's a farrier. Mark, would you have any, because there is a few breeders, breeders on the line, just in terms of the trimming, and what sort of things do we need to be looking out for at this stage, kind of 4.5 weeks out to the sale, and what sort of nutrition would help with the foals in the feet? I know Nicole has mentioned it, but any advice on the trimming side of things, Mark?
Necessarily, I suppose, the handling side of aspects, make it as safe as possible, and as much interaction as you can have with your foal would make it a whole pile easier for your farrier on the day. I suppose just the basic touch-ups, have them walked, just evaluate the movement, and any corrective touches, touching up that needs to be done, just pay attention and pay, if the foot needs balancing, or if it's slightly, turned in or dished out, it's a case, there's ways and means of just counterbalancing to leave things to narrow, to fall into place, should I say, really. A lot of foals I notice, when they're transitional between, that younger baby stage to, that stronger weaning, some of them, they widen in the chest, and it causes issues and problems.
Like we lost you there, Mark.
You still have a little bit of time at that stage, so just collaborate with your farrier. But you probably, with the law of averages and a good balanced diet, everything normally falls into place. You can see that with conformation. So just like epiphysitis is one thing they touched on there, and I see it from overfeeding. You just got to take control and say you need to back off the bucket, and you need to relax and find a proper balanced diet for them, and I think that grow care has helped significantly. But other than that, do the basics and do them right, small amounts regular.
There's just a couple of questions coming in there on the chat. Nicole, the first one that came in there is just how would you wean one foal?
Okay, again, I'd probably want to stick to I suppose nutrition on this. I wouldn't like to give too much advice on an area that I suppose everyone does things differently. Keeping your principles from a nutrition perspective, keeping your principles the same, ensuring that foal has a creep feed and it's feeding independently to that mare. So when you do wean the foal, it's not solely dependent, because if that foal will be by itself, it will just heighten that stress. So keeping that growth curve in mind, the foal is on its own feed. If you need a supplement like your Frisco foal there or something, just to give them an immune boost and to get you handling them, is probably the best scenario around that. But everyone will wean in different methods in different ways. But again, just keeping that stress to a minimum and making sure that they have nutrition, that you're not going to get that compensatory growth.
Perfect, Nicole, thank you. Just another one there. What is the advantage to the Red Mills prep mix compared to the foal and yearling mix?
Yeah, so the foal and yearling mix, it's an 18% protein feed. The vitamin mineral pack in it is concentrate, so you have a slightly higher level than you would have in the mix. This is designed really from feeding a foal weanling. It can be fed to yearlings as well, so your feeding rate is smaller because they're smaller and their digestive system is a lot smaller. That feed is, I suppose, specifically designed for a small feeding rate, and you're reaching your concentrate levels of protein, vitamin, mineral. The prep mix, you have a slightly larger feeding rate, you 16% protein. So this is really geared towards, a lot of it is to do with the yearling sales in the thoroughbred market. So these foals will be getting a larger feeding rate. They're that bit older, and the 16% protein fits that there. The vitamin mineral pack is slightly adjusted, so you can feed that bit more. So you're reaching a calorie content because they're that bit older. But in terms of ingredients, they're both a grain-based feed. They have your oats, barley, maize in it, and your soya bean. The difference really lies in what we're targeting for, I suppose. That prep mix is very popular in yearlings, in the thoroughbred industry. So they just require that bit more calories, whereas the foal and yearling mix, or the yearling cubes, is geared towards more your foal, your weaning, your growing young stock, that you don't want your feeding rate as big, to avoid that calorie dense or overtopping. So I hope that makes sense or helps answer the question.
And Nicole, because my equine nutrition knowledge is very outdated since I left college on this,
Yeah.
you know, when you talk about the calorie, you're talking about energy, aren't you? And are you saying that the energy levels are higher in the yearling in comparison to the foal yearling, and it's higher in that particular type of food?
Yeah, so calories, well, sorry, when I talk of calories, yeah, I'm talking about the energy, or your calories go to your weight gain or your weight. So they're both, if you looked at the composition and everything, their energy levels, or the kind of digestible energy, would be very similar, but
Yes.
you will get more calories from feeding the prep mix because your feeding rate will be slightly higher. So instead of feeding about 2 kilos of, say, the 18% foal and yearling, you could be feeding 3 to 4 of the prep mix. So you're getting more calories in that larger amount, or that extra feed, as opposed to feeding a smaller amount. It's more concentrate, so you're higher protein and higher vitamin mineral, and that allows you keep the calorie content slightly lower. So it's designed for a younger, a weanling, or a growing yearling.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
I just wanted to mention one thing there about the whole weaning thing, and again, I'm no expert on it either, but I know that some of the breeders did not. This is something that we have to deal with as well in-house, that, you know, some of the foals aren't of the weaning stage by the time of the sale, and again, there was a lady in Italy that bought 3 foals last year, and that is a service that we have the capacity on a small number, that if the breeder is up against it, the foals, the 3 foals, 4 foals, 5 foals, I think, came to one of the group members' farms, and they were kind of weaned off in a group format. Some of them were weaned, they went in with other weaned ones, and that worked well. So we have that capacity to offer the breeder if some foals are sold abroad. And you know, if they don't feel, I know one message came up in the group today, John Fallon, if he's looking in, he was like, well, what about the stress for the owner that has to deal with the weaning process? There is capacity in-house to look after that if that's an issue for the breeders and the customer come the time of the sale. So I just said I'd put that in there.
Just one other question there, Nicole. Is it okay to allow 24/7 access to haylage?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's good quality haylage, that's great. The more forage you can get, it's your baseline for any nutrition plan. So once it's good quality, and you're monitoring the growth and body condition, then that's great. It's really good for digestive health.
Perfect. And then just another one popped in there, Nicole. Can you feed a foal and yearling mix in the morning and a prep mix in the evening?
Yeah, you could, if you wanted to do that. Some people do mix feeds. It's easier to mix, I suppose, say a cube and a mixed version of a feed, because they're the same level of protein. So once you know you're kind of going to reach in between your 18% and your 16% protein level, and you're also going to reach in between your vitamin mineral level as well, because they do have slightly different vitamin mineral inclusion levels. So it is possible to do, and there probably is a way of knowing exactly how much then the foal is getting. But yeah, it's possible.
Thanks, Nicole. I think, Patrick, there's a question there for yourself. Do you wean in loose sheds or at grass or out of grass?
As I said, I'm not really qualified to do it, but I have had some experience. I've managed a few national hunt yards in the past. I haven't got as many brood mares now because I'm based where I am based in Norway. I just noticed there in our vendor declaration, we were doing it up today, and we did have to include any stereotypical behaviors. And just from my experience in that situation, yes, we had, and I'm only giving you opinion here, and I see other different opinions, but there was a situation where we had 20 odd national hunt mares, and we weaned all the foals pretty much at the same time. And they went into groups, but the housing at the time was very dark, and there was very solid partitions I'm just giving you the example. So I would be a fan of the group setting. I think the gradual weaning, where if you can do that, of course, if you can keep them stable, separate, where they can see each other, as Nicole said, that full-time access to the forage seemed to be good and worked well. But just giving you that example of that farm I did work on, it was a dark converted cattle shed. The partitions were solid down the middle. They couldn't see each other, and they came in healthy foals. And all I'm saying is that due to the environment, they were all housed. They couldn't see each other in individual stable units. It was just the design of it. Before I left the farm, there was windows in all the stables so they could see one another. But there was tendencies in those 18 to 20 foals. I did start to see the onset of the stereotypical behaviors. There was crib, a little bit of crib biting, a little bit of box walking going on, purely at the stress stage when they all came in from the paddocks and they went into their individual paddocks or into the individual stables. The feeding started, and then they were calling out for one another, and then the whole thing kind of kicked off. But that was more of a house and husbandry issue that I had no control of. So that's just giving you my experience of it. Yeah, I'm no expert on it, but that's what I felt. Yeah.
I think on the contract rearing side of things, what we typically do is we put them in pairs of 2 or 3 together, and we usually. The question was asked, will it be out in grass? Probably when the foal is taken away from the mare, probably best to ensure that you have, I suppose, good stabling and no chance of the individual breaking out. So, being out in grass and that, like, there are some risks, attached to that initially, but certainly for the first for the first 4 to 6 weeks, 2 to 3 foals together, if possible, with obviously, a turnout onto an arena, again, a very secure arena, so that, there's no risk of them, trying to break out or getting hurt for that. That's what we find, I think, works best from the contract rearing within the group that we've been doing over the last 4 or 5 years.
Thank you. Perfect. Nicole, just another one here. Is it a problem for animals to digest both cubes and mix, or should we stick to one type of feed?
No, a cube and a mix is equally as digestible. You can mix both of them in together as well. Usually you'll see there's a stud mix, a stud cube, the foal and yearling mix, foal and yearling cube. There's always an equivalent of both. So the composition is very similar, and what really differs is how it's made. So your grain-based feeds are steam flaked, coated with molasses, and then tucked down into the bag with a balancer pellet. And your cubes, everything is ground down. So your grains are steam cooked. They're passed into the bin with the balancer pellet, and then it's ground down, and it's double pelleted, so it's pressed twice. And yeah, a lot of it is down to the horse's preference. Maybe you have a fussy eater and they don't like cubes, they prefer a mix. Or owner preference, they like feeding you cubes because they know once the horse has eaten everything, they've gotten everything they need in that bowl. So yeah, it's nice for variety to mix both if you want, but yeah, it's no problem for them to digest or anything. They're both equally as digestible.
Brilliant, thank you. And then just one last one, Nicole has come in there. Is a calmer suitable option for an overly boisterous coat foal? And what would you recommend?
Yeah, you can give a calmer if it's for coming up to the sale or even on the day of the sale. It just helps. It won't change their underlying temperament, or it won't cause them to become absolutely dead and not move. What it does is just calms, it suppresses that kind of excitability or energetic side to it. So your ingredients like L-tryptophan or magnesium, they work side by side, and that just helps with your nervous function and everything. So yeah, if you're coming up to a sale or you're finding them very difficult to handle and you're trying to walk them and everything, there is supplements there like Nutricam that do help. So it'll just give you that, it'll just knock that extra fizz or even that anxiety or nervousness of going to do something. It helps there.
Thanks, Nicole. And the NutriCam it's available in a syringe, and it's also available in a liquid form as well. Perfect. Ding, ding, ding. Perfect. I think it's one of the pieces, I suppose, Nicole, that stood out to me just in your presentation really was the whole kind of managing weight and not those intense growth spurts and having your horses overtopped. I think one product I think that is, and I know you covered it in the presentation, is the Grow Care Balancer. Would it be fair to say your Grow Care Balancer is almost like a safe option in the sense that you're ensuring you're getting a complete kind of vitamin and mineral range, but you're also minimizing the risk of perhaps them gaining too much weight? And obviously people are going to be using their eye if they feel like their foals are under conditioned, obviously then they can take further action. But I think that Grow Care piece is a very kind of almost trustworthy product. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you've nailed it on the head there. It's I suppose you're supplying protein, vitamin and minerals, and you're not worrying about any of that calorie intake. And calories do come from forage, they come from your grass, your hay, your haylage. So access to that's fantastic. It keeps them busy. It's great for their mental attitude, that whole idea of chewing, their digestive system is good. So once there's no problems there and they're getting their energy from that, you can top dress with the Grow Care Balancer, and it just makes sure that forage diet is completely balanced. And they thrive off it. It's a great feed. It's very versatile. It's a nice one to have in the yard, because if you do have a brood mare there that is doing quite well and doesn't need a lot of hard feed, the Balancer is a great option for her as well. Or when you do wean the foal and she's left out, the Balancer is a good option for her too if she is carrying a bit of weight, just to give her a little bit of something and ensure that she's kept right as well. So yeah, it's a great safe option, especially when you're looking at feeding sport horses, because their growth is slightly different. A lot of feeds on the market are tailored towards your thoroughbred end, and they have a lot more, I suppose they're under a bit of time pressure, and they're feeding them calorie dense feeds. They're going to weaning sales, they're going to the yearling sales, and their turnaround is quite quick. Whereas your sport horse, you want to keep it really steady so that in the future that they'll have no problems in the performance. So it's a really, really nice option.
Great, thanks, Nicole. And it is worth noting the Grow Care Balancer is a very cost-effective balancer as balancers go. You are feeding just almost by the cup as opposed to by the scoop. So your bag is going to last you longer than your normal bag of mix or cubes. So just if you are kind of shopping around and benchmarking, it is always worth, when you are selecting your products, do pay attention to the composition, I suppose, of the products themselves. That should be available on most feed companies' websites, the rate of all of the vitamins and minerals included in those packages. So you can do your little bit of benchmark research and compare and contrast, not just the composition and nutritional, the analytical consistency of the feed, but also then comparing that to your price. Because at the end of the day, I suppose it is a business for a lot of people, but the Grow Care Balancer is a very cost-effective balancer for the quality that it is. It's, as I say, it's a very high-spec nutritional package. It is part of the overall care range. So as Nicole mentioned at the start of our presentation, it does include all of the Red Mills nutrition care package as well. So it's a nice product. It's also worth noting that your local stockists, where you stock your feed, if they don't have the product that you're looking for, it absolutely ask them to order it in for you. That's pretty much what they're there to do. And if you're struggling on that end, do come and contact our customer service directly, or if you know a rep in your area, please do speak to them. But as I say, some of the feeds are available to be able to bought on the Red Mill store website. There is a delivery charge for the feed, but when you're buying the balancer, sometimes actually the convenience might be worth the delivery charge. But it is a very convenient way of sourcing your supplements as well, when you're looking at the online, because they literally get delivered to your home. So from a convenience perspective, that is an option. Just one more there. Is it okay to feed low starch beet pulp and the Grow Care Balancer throughout weaning without cereals or cubes?
Yeah, I suppose it's very individual. So beet pulp is a lovely option. It's a super fiber. It's another, I suppose, fiber, your forage source. And the only thing to bear in mind is beet pulp is it is conditioning. So if you're feeding the Grow Care for the purpose of keeping the calorie content down, just be aware that that little bit of beet pulp is going to be adding a bit of calories or condition on there. But if that's what you're trying to achieve, absolutely, it's a lovely, that's a really nice diet, because you're promoting that digestive health, and you're also ensuring that the Grow Care is covering all your protein, vitamin, minerals. So it's also a low starch way of doing it. So you've no starch in your Grow Care. It's only at 3%. And your beet pulp, if it is a low starch or unmolasted, there's no level in that either. So as opposed to feeding a grain-based feed, if you do have, say, an excitable horse or anything, it's going to be a really nice, cool way of weaning that foal and producing it.
Perfect. Nicole, just a comment following on from that. Beet pulp, does it help prevent colic?
Yeah, I suppose it's the way it's soaked, so it has to be soaked properly, whether you've your speedy beet, that's the 15-minute soak, or your pellets, they're usually 12 to 24 hours. If that's soaked properly, it gathers that water, so it's really hydrating. It keeps the gut functioning and moving, so it won't cause any impaction, colic or anything. If anything, it'll keep the digestive system flowing. So it is, yeah, I suppose it's a way of preventing a buildup of, you'd really see impaction, colic, that's what it would help with.
Ideal. Thanks, Nicole. I think they're all the questions we've had so far, unless there's any more to pop in. No. Patrick, will I hand over to you to do a wrap up?
Yeah, if you want. No pressure. No, I just, thanks to Nicole for the informative presentation, and thanks to you also, Jane, for all the feedback and the follow-up phone calls over the past couple of weeks. Really great having you guys on site. And again, we look forward to seeing you guys at the foal sale on the 9th of October. And I think the information tonight really supplements what we're trying to achieve, and that's to bring forward a product ready and fit for the market and fit for purpose. And I think we all realize from the presentation the importance of the nutrition to be done correctly and in moderation. So again, thanks to you both, and thanks for the collaboration, because that's actually part of our strategy in-house, that we collaborate with the breeder, the stallion owners, and at organizational level, but also now Red Mills in Ireland as well. So thanks again to both of you.
No, and thank you for the opportunity. Like, it is so great to be able to talk directly to end users.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, obviously we're very proud of the range of products that we present, but ultimately it's the information and the insight and the knowledge that goes with it. And as I say, we're lucky to work with the likes of Nicole and our wider technical team. So they are available. That technical support is there. As I said, if you're struggling with stockist availability, if you're struggling to select the right product, you've got your concerns maybe specifically about some of your horses, and not just foals, all horses. We have a great team there. So all of our contact information is available on the website. We do try and share as much useful info across our social media channels. And as I say, we appreciate the opportunity to partner with you guys. We recognize the value on what you're putting forward. And I think that collaborative approach can only benefit everybody. So as I say, very happy for the opportunity this evening, and thanks for so many people who joined. The session's been recorded. I maybe package that, Patrick, so you can circulate to anyone who would like to view it, who maybe wasn't able to join tonight's session live. And as I say, if there's any follow-up info, we will have, there'll be some of us there anyway in October in Glenamaddy. So even if people want to chat to us on the day, we'll have a representation there. So we might be looking towards the west to some of our team there. So we've Nia O'Malley and even Dominic Bly, who I think
Dominic Bly, good
we haven't
capacity
shipped Dominic back to the desert by then. He might still be around. So we'll definitely, we look forward to that. And look, we wish everybody the very best of luck in producing their foals. As I say, I appreciated the comment that it's stressful for the owners as well as the foals. I think producing any animal for competition or a sales ring, I think horses come with a health warning that way anyway. So we wish everyone the very best of luck.
Yeah, and I suppose my closing comment is that we probably might use some of the extracts from Nicole's presentation, if that's okay with you, Nicole. The thing that stood out to me was achieving your target in the sales ring. So we will maybe pull some of your slides and put it out as characters on our social media. And that'll get more into the people's brains over the next couple of weeks towards production for the fall sale. It's not something that's going to happen the night before. You won't fatten the pig the night before the sale, isn't that what they say? So I think we'll do that, So that's it for me. Thanks to everyone that joined.
Thanks everyone, and thanks for the interaction, all the questions. So hopefully you all took away something from it.
Thank you, Nicole.
Great. Okay, guys.
And Jane, thank you very much also.
Thank you very much, everybody. Take care. Have a nice evening.
Very good. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.